So the darkest part of the nucleus would be the nucleolus. So that's not a particularly dark nucleus, that's a fairly pale nucleus. The cytoplasm is relatively dark, and then the cytoplasm of the neuroglia and their nuclei can be seen around the neurons. With their infinite and myriad variety, all tissues of the body can still be classified functionally into 4 basic types. And the 4 basic types are epithelium, you saw an example of liver tissue; muscle, you saw an example of skeletal muscle; nervous tissue, we saw both neurons and supporting neuroglia; and the supporting or connective tissues, commonly called the connective tissues, which are a vast range of different tissues that support everything else in the body. Epithelial tissue is everywhere a selective barrier that covers the external surface of the body, internal body surfaces. It's part of skin, it's the outer layer of the skin, it's the lining of the airway of the respiratory system, lining of the GI tract, lining of the urogenital tract. It forms the glands associated with all the major organ systems of the body. It forms slippery membranes, such as the pleura and the peritoneum, that ease mobile organs, organs that change size within the body cavities. And it's completely avascular. So epithelial cells forming this barrier must receive their oxygen and nutrients from a layer of connective tissue underlying the epithelium. So covering of the body, internal covering of internal surfaces of the body, slippery sacs, and major glands. The supporting or connective tissues are about the most varied group of the 4 basic tissue types. The supportive connective tissues include fat, which we've seen, dense connective tissue, which forms ligaments and tendons, and those will be quite important to us as we look at the basis for musculoskeletal injuries, cartilage, and bone, in this case decalcified bone, where the minerals have been dissolved out of the bone, and we're basically seeing the organic component. In contrast, muscle and nerve are very active tissues. The basic function of muscle tissue is motion. We'll look at the individual tissues in more detail when we get to the particular cases in which they play an important role in understanding the case. There are 3 types of muscle tissues. This is an example of skeletal muscle that we just saw. There will also be smooth muscle and cardiac muscle that we won't look at in too much detail. But what they all have in common is their property of contraction. So this is an excitable tissue, this is a tissue that contracts, this is a tissue that when it contracts produces motion in various elements of the musculoskeletal system and organs of the body. Finally, this is an example of nervous tissue that you saw before. So neurons communicating with each other, communicating with muscles, communicating with other parts of the organ systems. And so the function of the nervous tissue is communication. This is another excitable tissue. Quiz question. So which of these is not a supporting or connective tissue?